Thank you very much, and good evening. It's very nice to be able to say, hey, after a couple of years of looking for products and trying to find something for the South African market, that we actually launching something, and we're able to present something. But before I go into my presentation, I just want to show you the DAN website and where to find all this information, and you can follow along, or if you want to do it afterwards, so that you can have a look at it. So obviously this will be the landing page on your DAN website. Under the dive cover, you'll see Dive Pro Liability. You would be clicking onto that. It'll take you through, and everything I'm going to discuss tonight will be on the website, as well as the chassis from an IT perspective to get the quote. And thanks to the partners of Buy Me, they put it together. So if we click through to the quoting system, the quotes are there. They're acting as the brokers behind the product for us. It's insured through I2, all registered financial service providers. So we've vetted all of it. We've gone through the policy wording. We've gone through how it applies to dive pros, and specifically in our region, and I'll be taking through and unpacking some of the coverage that is now available in the South African market. So without further ado, I'm going to go through, but just to take you through, this is what it basically looks like. So you'll be able to get it. This is the type of things that we're covering. So obviously we're talking very much professional indemnity tonight, but it includes a broader liability suite, and it's all packaged into one package for us, and it's quite a product, I believe, and at a reasonable price that's available in the South African market. So that's what it looks like. Obviously, you would then go and get a quote. You'd click on getting a quote. You'd add your name, your phone number, and your email address, and just follow the prompts, and you'd be going through. And if you accept the quote, you can actually activate the quote online with no intervention from any human being, unless you have questions, and then obviously we'll be able to answer to you. So important, it has to be through the DAN packages, so you have to be a DAN member to access this. Obviously, there's a fair amount of underwriting that goes behind this. We need to make sure that the safety protocols are in place, and I'll take you through the various sites. Let me just stop that and start my presentation. Want to just shout if you can see as soon as I've got it up.
All right, I'll tell you now. Yes, I can see it, Gordon.
Okay,
so
super.
Off you go.
All right, super. All right, so liability insurance for dive professionals in the broader aspect. So what we're looking to do is to obviously protect the passion within the DAN South African environment. Just a bit of an overview. I've mentioned them already. This is in partnership with DAN South Africa and Buy Me. Both Buy Me is a registered financial service provider, and they're providing the IT behind the system to be able to facilitate this process with DAN, so that we can get quotes and administer the product accordingly. So let me just make sure that's my correct side. So duty of care. What I want to do as a starting point is just to unpack why we're looking at the various covers. What is it that we're trying to solve? What problem are we trying to solve for the dive professionals? In South Africa, especially over the last 5 years, I've seen, especially down here in Umkama's side and down towards Protea Banks and Shady Beach, where I'm positioned, we've definitely seen an increase in foreigners coming in to diving. And obviously it's good money for the South African concessions, but that also brings in a huge amount of liability. The foreigners are used to being able to sue if something goes wrong, especially the Americans and the Europeans. They hold a high standard, and they hold things accountable to the law as such of the land. And in the South African context, we've never been able to offer professional indemnity insurance. But what is it that we're actually looking to do? What is it where things can go wrong? So it's obviously from the old English law side common law, where everyone has a responsibility to ensure that do not cause any harm or financial loss to others and their property. Whether you're a pro or an average person on the street, this is common law. So if you cause harm to somebody or you cause damage to their property, you can be held accountable for it and legally accountable for it. The stakes are upped if you are a pro, especially, and we're not just talking in the diving fraternity, but any profession, be it doctors, lawyers, brokers, accountants, there's a professional duty that is not just the reasonable man, but that your peers your peers will judge you in a court of law in terms of your professional conduct. And this is where we look at the dive industry as such, and we look at our pros, and we're talking specifically about dive masters, instructors, skippers that hold professional positions of trust within the organization. If you recall, some time back, there was that High Court case that was thrown out in a High Court case in Cape Town with the diving side. Lucky, the initial lower courts found the divers liable, and then it was overturned to be an accident, which was very fortunate in that situation. But I'm sure, nothing compensates for the trauma and the loss of that dive operator and the divers and the skipper in that particular situation, and it's unfortunate. Now, to hold, for the courts to hold you professionally liable in your capacity is something that we need to look at, and this has just not been available in the South African context. Right, so understanding the liability side of things, I'm going to go into the various aspects of it. I'm going to talk broader than just professional indemnity, but I will touch on professional indemnity in great depth, but also bring all the other things to the party. We've discussed the general and professional duties of care, but there's also statutory business legislation that holds you accountable from a liability perspective. Simple things like if you've got a PDY or CC registered, or even if you're operating as a sole proprietor, there are statutory regulations from a Companies Act point of view that you'll be held accountable for. And those are things that we need to take into consideration as well. So we need to look at things like public liability for businesses, and where does this all fit in from a risk mitigation point of view? How do we actually navigate all of this? And Dan's very good, if you look at the HIRA courses and all the other courses that they offer from a risk mitigation point of view in trying to make diving a lot safer and educating us in terms of the best practices. Just put up this matrix and just remind everyone, especially the pros, we've all seen this and as discussed. So the first point for any risk, of course, is to try and avoid the risk. It's inevitable. If you're not going to go diving, you're not going to be at risk. So it's not necessarily the right thing to do. But if you're doing a risk analysis, you're going to look at what you can avoid. If the risk cannot be avoided, how do we mitigate this risk? Now, can the risk be mitigated through policies and procedures? How do we make it safer to mitigate that? And all the procedures, whether you are NAUI, PADI, SSI, RAID, instructor, you've all gone through those processes where we look at mitigating the risks and we get into procedures, or what we call standard operating procedures, to make sure that we make things safer for our clients. What we're talking about now is transferring that risk. When you're no longer, even when you've got the best processes in place, accidents do happen and things do happen, and then we need to transfer that risk, and that's where insurance fits in on this. So it's not the cornerstone, it's one of the areas that we need to look at, and then we transfer that risk, and that's where we're getting to tonight in terms of the liabilities, to transfer that risk. And then if we can't transfer that risk, what is it that we need to do? And if we decide not to, due to financial or economic reasons, not to transfer that risk, how do we accept that risk? We need to plan and say, right, we accept that risk. It's not from a severity or frequency point of view, it's not worth insuring, then we need to accept that risk. And there's not much more we can do about that other than, hopefully nothing goes wrong, but Murphy's Law is there always will be something. All right. It's very seldom that you can have one policy with everything in. All right. I think this is where the BuyMe and the i2 have really come together with their Sure Thing product for the diving community. They have put together a package which does not only just include the professional indemnity, but covers public liability. It's got product liability. It's got care, custody, and control. It's got cyber liability. It's got employment practice, directors and officers, defamation, pollution, defective workmanship, employees' liabilities, and trustee liability in it. And I will unpack each one of those in terms of the diving side and how it's applicable to us and why we should be looking at it. All right. Just to take you through some of the support side of things, there's obviously some legislative or statutory things that are on the body that, are of less concern to us, but cyber has become a big issue, and POPI regulation is a big issue in protecting of information. And we are custodians of that information. All the medical records and things that we have on our students, of our divers, their physical addresses, banking accounts, all of those type of things, they're procedures that need to be in place in terms of the IT procedures. Nowadays, you don't go to the bank with a balaclava and a revolver to hold up the bank anymore. This is all done via IT. Those days are gone. It's much easier to steal money, from a business or from a bank using technology than it is to risk physically going there with a balaclava and a revolver and holding up the bank to make a withdrawal. All right. So the support, vaccine disputes, business-related legal contraventions, all sorts of additional things that are part of the support on the product. So let's get down and let's unpack the product itself, and you'll find that on the Dan website. So let's look at the individual pros or the individual dive pros or freelance instructors, as many you will know. So freelancers where you're operating. You're operating a business as a sole proprietor, or even maybe by yourself in a CC or PDY limited, but you're not part of a bigger dive concession and a dive resort as such. The cover that is available to you is 1 million limit on individual claims with a 2 million aggregate for the year. So what does that aggregate mean? So 1 million means any incident that you have, and there's sublimits and for professional indemnity and all the rest, but overall the cover is in place. You've got 1 million limit on individual claims. What the 2 million aggregate means is that you have 2 million for the year. So you've literally got, in theory, 2 claims of R1 million in a year that you can have on the policy before the policy is basically terminated for all the cover being utilized in the process. So you've got 2 million in a year. For individuals, there's a 5,000 rand excess. So yes, 5,000 rand is still a reasonable chunk of change for an incident, but it's a reasonable amount. It's there if you're not going to the small claims court or something to be able to make sure that not all those small claims are coming through on the policies. So your excess will be 5,000. From a Dan perspective, you've got to be active on the Dan Master Pro and Master Tech members. So those are the 2 Dan membership packages. So if you are members on those packages, and why are we looking at that? Because that's where the pros are. It'll be silly to self-insure yourself for a standard package or something lower, and you're a pro. You need the extra limits and things, and that's where the pro cover is. So we're offering this overall to the pros, and this is where the package is. So make sure that you have the right membership in place, and then you have access to this product. So the coverage limited, unfortunately, and I see some of our Mauritius colleagues here, Francois, sorry, this is only available currently in South Africa. Obviously, this is a trial. We are getting this up and going. This is our, what they call skunkwork project, to see if we can get economies of scale and get the insurers to bite to take on a bigger chunk. And then we'll obviously try and extend this further. But right now, it's only available in the South African borders and while you're working in the South African borders. So you can't go now to Europe and use this product and have PI cover or liability covering you. It's only in the South African borders, within the South African borders and jurisdiction right now. So what does this package cost? Guys, I think it's been really reasonable for 1 million cover with a 2 million aggregate with a 5,000 excess for individual freelance instructors. The premium is a fixed 500 Rand per month, and that'll cover you for all your liabilities. Right. Going on to the dive centers and to the dive businesses, obviously we need a little bit more there in terms of coverage. There we've got 2.5 million limit on individual claims with a 5 million annual aggregate cap on the product. There your excess is 10,000. So double that of a freelance instructor. Also available on the Active Dan Master or Pro Master Tech members. And Francois, I'm sure, Monet, I'm sure it'll be available. And we've got other programs that we'll be running, with the HIRA and all the rest, to look to see how we can get something going in terms of structure where we can look at pricing and loyalty programs in that. But right now, this is the product as it stands. This is the coverage that is available to businesses or to dive businesses. Also just available in the South African context. And for this product for dive stores, because it's fixed cover right now, it's 1,000 Rand per month for the 2.5 million and the 5 million aggregate per annum. All right, now we get into some of the nitty-gritties. All right, so why professional indemnity liability? Well, anyone who's a dive pro basically has an agency behind them, and any advice or instruction that you give as an instructor will be considered professional. So if someone hurts themselves or there is a financial loss of some sort, or that someone suffers a loss due to your omission or error as an instructor, you need the cover in place. And this is what the professional indemnity covers. Now, many people always ask me, so why is liability overall so complex? Again, the insurers follow legal precedent. Every time there's something new in law that someone is found guilty of or civilly responsible for from a wrongdoing perspective, there's a new adaptation to the product. There's new insurance that will come out. Insurers look at what is known, and they can price what is known. They can't price what is the unknown at this stage. So they price risk. And from a legal perspective, we then look at and say, well, what is known in terms of professional indemnity? And that's why we're limiting it at this stage to the cap of 2.5 million and 1 million with the annual aggregates as it is. Public liability covers claims arising from injury or property damage suffered by third parties during diving activities. Now, that could be, at the dive shop, known as slip and trip. If someone gets injured, you're busy washing the floors, or a towel falls off the roof and smacks the person on the head before they enter your premises. That would be public liability. That wouldn't be professional indemnity because there's no advice. Your professional advice has not been given there, and public liability is then needed to be able to cover you for those instances where you'll be held accountable for your client's losses. Right? Product liability. Often people say, well, what is it that we're looking for from a product liability? This covers claims related to injury or damage caused by defective equipment. right? Whether you're selling that equipment or not. It could be your dive gear that you're renting out. It could be anything that you have to do in terms of product. As diving becomes more complex, there's more and more equipment that's involved, right up to rebreathers. There's a lot that can go wrong with product. And if you're renting out that product, or you're using products or the equipment for clients, you need to make sure that you have product liability in place. Defective workmanship, many of us, and I've done it myself, you go and do the courses, and then as an extra income stream, you service gear. All right, provided that you've got the right qualifications behind you, and you've done the certifications with the various product providers, you can service gear. But if something goes wrong, you require defective workmanship in terms of the equipment that you've serviced, to make sure that you cover any claims that you could be held liable for. Right. Technical details continued. So care, custody, and control. It's another nice legal term that the lawyers like to use. In essence, the simplest thing is it covers equipment and personal belongings of your customers under the business care. Now, divers come along, they're your guests, the equipment is held in your storeroom, or left out to dry in the drying space, and then you pack it away, and the next morning you put it out. It's now your care, custody, and control. If something goes missing, and inevitably it does, and it's always a student that's taken a wetsuit or not, but if it's not found, let's say for whatever reason there's a loss, be it a fire, be it material loss, or whatever the case may be, and you held accountable for it and you found liable for it, it's in your care, custody, and control. The policy will trigger and respond to those losses. Defamation, I don't have to go there. There's so much online bantering and people getting upset, and that offers you some sort of form of protection should you be held legally responsible for defamation or slander. Pollution, all our equipment that we use, the boats that we go out with, whether it's diesel, oil, petrol, whatever the case may be, we have different things. We might be, have various other things that we can contribute to from a pollution perspective, and that cover will cover you as well. Employment practices, something that we don't really consider as dive instructors, but there is a CCMA, there are labor courts, there are procedures in place from a fair labor point of view. We need to make sure that we've got cover for that, and this is also covered within this policy. So it's not just the professional indemnity, but it's the broader aspect of liabilities that we're trying to cover under one policy here. All right. Excess motor liability, again, this is not if your vehicle that you're towing the boat is uninsured and you don't have insurance in place, this is not going to help you. Protocols need to be in place first. But any excess of liability that is required in terms of any incident of you putting people on the back of the Land Cruiser or the Bucky to take them down to the launch site with a boat in tow, this will respond to that cover. But the basics need to be in place first. So there are some conditions and things that we need to look at to make sure that the protocols are in place. And there's more technical detail, because that's not all, folks. Right. Workplace injuries, your typical COIDA. So COIDA would respond to most instances if they're South African, but what happens if you've got a non-South African that's interning as a DM for you in your business? Can they, will COIDA pay out? Have you registered people for COIDA? Those are the things that we need to look at while we're turning our businesses into professional businesses in terms of our diving industry. Cyber liability. I've discussed cyber liability. I don't think I'm going to go more into it, but it's not just ransomware and being held hostage because your site is now down and holding your site. Those things do happen too, but it's also about the data breaches. It's also about the POPIA breaches. It's broader than that. Do they have, do you have to have certain minimum criteria? Absolutely. But that's all contained in the policy. Directors and officers liability, probably the cover that we selfishly don't look at, especially if you have partners and shareholders in your business. And I'm talking to the bigger businesses. As a director, you can be held personally accountable, and your own personal assets can be attached for decisions you make for the business. This also is covered under this, provided your structures and things are in place. Obviously, if your business is a sole prop and it's just you, that cover won't be that exciting to you, but the cover is available, and it's available there as you grow and you do take on partners, or you do take on a bigger business, and you build your business as the years go by. Trustee liability, many people, we all greenies in many ways, or what other people would call tree huggers, and we have trusts or things that we support, and we like to get involved in formulating trusts and being in getting involved in philanthropy and all the rest. The charitable component that is operated as a trust, the liability we covered as well under this policy. Right. Just what are the criteria? Obviously there has to be some rules, and again, I'm sorry, it's there's some technical detail here, but I think most of us will fall into this criteria, so we won't be excluded. Turnover and revenue or fees less than 20 million, and with 20 employees or fewer. So if you've got more than that, this product is not for you. Then we need to individually look at you and individually underwrite you. Location for now, sorry to my Mauritius colleagues that are on the line here. Location only in South Africa for now, and for South African operations, just so that we've got a test market going, and hopefully we'll be able to expand a little bit further to the wider South African region in time to come. Structures, single entities with no subsidiaries. So again, if there's a holding company and you've got a whole bunch of subsidiaries, it's for single entities only. It's not at a holding company level. Data handling, processing fewer than 100,000 personally identifiable records, especially when it comes to debits and credit cards. So if you've got online shop, or you processing payments within your business, that will be covered as well, provided that there's less than 100,000 personal records at any given stage. Security measures, regular updates, strong passwords and firewalls. Those are some of the basics, but you'll see it in the policy wording. The basics have to meet, and it's not rocket science, guys. I mean, it's really the basics. It's not any statutory requirements where you've got to have a VPN and all of these other fancy things. It's really the basics that need to be in place here. So read through it and just make sure that you're compliant from the basics of a cyber security perspective, and you've got the cover. All right, solvency and compliance. Solvent with no past or pending regulatory inquiries. Obviously, if your company is insolvent, we cannot provide the cover. The risk is just too high. So solvency of your company is important. And then also, if you've got any pending regulatory inquiries is entered, we need to take you out of the pool, and we need to look at it individually on merit, and we can potentially put the cover in place. But if not, unfortunately, this product won't be for you. Audit reports. So all of these sound very formal. Unqualified audit reports with no adverse findings. We've got Anne on the line here too. As a chartered accountant and an accountant, these are things that we need to look at. And if there's a qualifying report from an auditor on a business, obviously there's risk, and we need to understand the risk before we take it on. You can't just go through the normal process on this package. Right? Employment stability, no plans on retrenchments for the next 12 months. So obviously that'll be a criteria, because obviously we're providing some liability if you get sued, and legal defense costs and with this product. So we need to make sure that you're not just taking out the product and then you're going to retrench all your staff. And if you do get sued at the CCMA or the Labour Court, that we're going to be paying for it. So there is a bit of a criteria behind it. Human resources, if you've got a human resources department, either internal or outsourced HR function is a criteria. So if you're going through procedures, obviously it's good to have a formal HR function, whether it's outsourced or internally. Okay. What does this not cover? Right, first party losses. Now, first party losses are your own losses, money in your business. You know, if your business is losing money, this is not a liability that we're looking to cover. The first party losses will be for your own account. There's other insurance that you could put in place for that, but this is not covering the liability on that side. Product failure and recall. So if one of the name brand diving equipment has a product recall, obviously the supplier needs to recall it on that basis, and the liability is not going to be for your policy on that, although under the Consumer Protection Act, we all jointly and severally liable in the supply chain to look at liability. Fines and penalties and punitive damages, because it's against public policy in law to compensate someone for fines. And you know, as much as insurance would like to compensate that, we can't be seen as going against the law as it is in terms of the country right now and public policy. So fines and punitive damages, unfortunately, will not be covered and will be an exclusion. I mean, obviously, insolvency, if the business goes insolvent, as I mentioned previously, it's you know, the risk is just a lot higher for liability to come out there. There's also moral risks and all sorts of things, and the cover is not extended to businesses where there will be insolvency. Investment vice or performance, obviously that doesn't impact on us. What does is obviously on the labor side of things, sexual harassment, abuse, and misconduct. That's going to be excluded, and any racism or hate speech will not be entertained from a legal defense point of view. So those are just some of the exclusions on the policy. Right. Then obviously I have a bit of a disclaimer because I am a licensed advisor. I need to just say that what I've given you is general information. We need to apply it to your individual circumstances, and you need your own advice to go through your advice on that. Mornay, I'm ready for any questions that anyone might have.
All right, well, Gordon, thank you for introducing the product to us. And it's nice to have it available, even though it's limited to South Africa for the moment. But I'm confident that we can make it grow so we can extend it to other parts of our region, because I know many of the folks there are looking to that, and there's a bit of a sort of a down, you know, on a service provider side of things like that. There is a question that was placed in the Q&A section by Bronwyn. If any of the other participants have questions, please pop them in there. But I've also noted down a couple of questions which I'll ask, but I'll first allow you to address Bronwyn's question. She says it's a bit of a technical or tech details kind of question. What about pollution, particular sort of contaminated air fills? How would that sort of apply to, you know, the package, you know, either as an individual Dive Pro liability package or from a business perspective?
Okay, so Bronwyn, yeah, so that's an interesting question. Thank you. Again, pollution, contaminated air fills. Remember, this is a liability product, so there has to be some wrongdoing on your part, and there must be an injury to another party, preferably to one of your clients or staff members. So if that's, contaminated air is going to affect someone and someone's going to be injured as a result of that, absolutely, then the cover is going to trigger in from a legal defense point of view and look at that. But it's not going to cover just, when you realize, all your cylinders are contaminated, and pay for the refills and the cleaning thereof. So that will be a first party loss. So that's a loss that you would need to cover yourself.
All right. So Bronwyn, I don't know if you want to just give us a heads up whether that works for you or not.
So there was a thumbs up.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Thank you. So now, second question before I get to mine. Angie has got a question. She says, great product. Will it be applicable and available to freediving instructors?
So I mean, there's no restriction. The restriction is that there must be Dan members. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So if you're running a business, Monet, I mean, it extends to the broader diving community, not just scuba diving or technical divers. It'll apply to everyone. Obviously, we need to just look at restrictions, but there won't be any problems as far as free diving is concerned. No.
So Gordon, as I understood it, as you explained in the beginning, if it's your profession, so you're leading dives professionally as a dive leader, I guess in the scuba industry, we call them dive masters, or you providing instruction, or you skippering a boat where you're actually transporting people. And in this case, as a freediving instructor, we should be able to extend that to Angie.
Mona, anyone who has from a certifying agency has got a number that's been certified as a professional.
Yeah.
All right. And is running a business.
Yeah.
Can look at this cover.
Okay.
All right. That's a criteria. Yes. So if you're still doing your internship, unfortunately not, you've got to be experienced. You've got to be a pro first before you can take on this cover. So it's only for the pros and
so
for
once
those
they
that are
qualify.
running businesses. Yeah. Once they qualify.
All right.
Yeah.
So while we wait for some other folks to post a couple of questions, Angie, I hope that answers your question. So essentially, yes, you can apply and it's available obviously on the site now. See, there's a new question. Okay, so she says, amazing. Thank you so much. So Gordon, I have a couple of questions that I've just put together that people might be thinking of, but they haven't really asked it yet or maybe got to that point. Let's say the cover restrictions limits that you mentioned, for individuals, it's 1 million with all the bits that go below that. And for dive business, it's 2.5 million. What if you want more cover? Is that possible? And can that be negotiated?
So, in theory, anything can be negotiated. It's whether the insurers have the appetite for the risk. And right now, just getting this cover for us in place was a huge challenge. And I think, and again, I go back to saying that this is our skunk work, it is our pilot that we're looking at in the South African context, in the South African market. If you look at the European market, you look at the States, even Asia Pacific, those packages are available, for pros. You can have much broader, bigger cover. Our market is quite small. And insurers look at risk appetite and they look at economies of scale and numbers to make up the cover. So the cover's been restricted right now, but I'm pretty confident if we've got economies of scale and we support the products and from a requirement point, those limits will increase. And nothing stops us if you require more that cover is to approach the insurer, but it won't be through the standard product. We'd have to go outside of this standard product package and underwrite.
Yeah, so I'm thinking especially, if you've got a very big dive resort or dive business and maybe you need more cover, most probably that would be something on a case-by-case basis that you would then engage with the BME and ITU team and get that, see what is possible. Is that correct, Gordon?
Correct.
All right. And just if there are any questions like that, Gordon is available to answer those. We've created an email sort of channel it's liability@dansa.org, so he can field some of those if you're unsure, and sort of then pass that on to the BME and IT team to make that work. I see there's another question from Moritz. I'll get to that in a moment. I just want to go through my second question here. So the business package, Gordon, you provide us with all that cover, but does it also cover your staff members, be that your divers, your skippers, let's say your cleaners, if you've got a little restaurant maybe in your facility? Does it cover the barista and the chef and so forth? To what extent is the cover available for, or does it sort of extend into your business as far as staff members go?
But again, it's around the business. This thing is built for SME businesses. So
Okay.
the insurers understand that there are different income streams coming in from different angles. So you'll be selling gear, you'll be selling coffee, you'll be selling toasted sandwiches and things, and hot chocolate to divers. So all of that is part of your business. So you talk about staff. Yes, it will cover your staff under the business too, and must be full-time staff. So it can't just be casuals that you employ or interns. And you got to look at it in the bigger picture. And the whole aspect of it is to cover and provide liability for the SME market, which we fall in. If you're bigger than that, and I don't think we'd have any of those huge type of dive operators like they have in the States, in South Africa. But if you do get to that stage, I mean, obviously we would need to look at individual cover on each one of those liability products, because each one of those things are actually a standalone product in its own right in a professional arena.
And is there a limit to the amount of staff members that a business can have, under the package, or was it?
Yeah, Mano, that was part of the criteria. So it was 20. Yeah.
20.
So, yeah. Again, we're looking at the SME market.
Okay. And Gordon, if let's say I've got permanent dive masters and instructors that work for me, they don't need to then take out their own professional liability, because that would be covered under my business liability. Is that correct? The only criteria is that
the criteria is that they are full-time employees of yours. They're not they're not casuals that you're bringing in. So you're not bringing in and hiring freelancers on that basis. They must be genuine employees of yours, and then absolutely they will be covered under your cover.
And I guess they need to be active Dan Master members. Is that correct, Gordon? Okay.
Correct.
All right. So Francois Bisson, I hope that answers your question. Then secondly, the third or last question I have is, let's say there's a claimable event. What is the process involved, Gordon? How do we go about, it's not, if I compare it to, let's say, Dan, the primary thing is dive emergencies or dive information. And the general, way of doing that is picking up the phone and calling or dialing the emergency or the information hotline, and then, getting the service you require. Now, in a liability case, it's not necessarily always pressing in that way. How I just sort of get a feel for what is required. Do you send an email? Do you also call the hotline? Do you get do you bypass Dan completely and go straight to BME and I2? What is your advice for the folks that want to join this package?
So, from a discussion point of view, there are protocols in place. Most agencies have protocols in place, first of all. So, if it's a dive accident and it's under the professional indemnity side of things, follow your standard operating procedures in terms of your agency first. That is crucial. The second part is to notify BME online. If you need Dan's support in that, we're happy to provide that support and to discuss it with you. But it is we have to lodge the claim with BME, and they will then lodge the claim as the advisors with the insurer for the package, and they will then take over and provide counselling and direction in terms of what's the next step in the process.
Yeah. Okay, so if the folks do come to us directly, we will then just facilitate the process and pass them on to the BME team. All right, so we do have a question here from Maritz. I think in part you've answered this, but I think he's looking for a little bit more details. He said, what will it take for this product to be available outside of the South African borders?
So is this Francois asking?
No, it's Maritz.
Maritz.
Yeah.
Maritz, yes. So it's a regulatory thing, you know, under the Financial Services Board right now and PA, as well as the Reserve Bank. These are the restrictions that we find ourselves in from a territorial perspective. So if we're able to get the cover in place, the next thing then is to approach the regulators in the different regions. And it works exactly in the States and in Europe like that too. So you start off at a point, you get critical mass, you understand what needs to be provided, and then with that we then approach the various regulators in the territorial side. So we would have to go to Mauritius, get a hold of their financial service board, say this is what we'd like to do. You know, how do we go about it? Registering. This is our successes. This is what we're offering in terms of the region. This is what you do. There's a sort of underlying agreement, and I know, you know, we've all in the past. I mean, I know myself from a NAWI perspective. I used to purchase PI cover from the States because that's what NAWI recommended to us, and then they withdrew it because it was actually illegal to be sold in the South African context. So that's why now we withdrew it, and I'm sure it's pretty much everywhere the same thing. You know, under the financial services legislation, it's heavily regulated. So we need to approach those various regulators to be able to get that. But we need to start somewhere, you know, and right now we've got this available to us in the South African context to cut our teeth on, and yeah, we're definitely expanding.
Okay. So, Francois from Mauritius, I think I can answer these, but, you know, fill in the gaps if I miss a couple. He wants to know, does this cover dive medical expenses? And two, can we add more cover, or is it more available? So I think we've answered those, Francois, because the medical cover or the emergency cover, that is through the DAN membership side. You know, you first have to be a active DAN member, and then the liability side will come from the liability package, which is in partnership with BME and I2. And for the moment, the packages are set, but if there's specific criteria, I think, Gordon, you said that can be discussed on a sort of a case-by-case basis with the BME and I2 team to see what what your requirements are or what your needs are as such. Is that correct? Are you happy with that, Gordon?
Yeah, Mone. So pretty much going through the quote system online with it'll stop you. So if you're doing the disclosure and you're looking for something more, it'll say, okay, we'll have to get in contact with you. It's not going to allow you to go through the process if it's not the standard parameters. And anything outside of the standard parameters, we will then get involved on an individual discussion consultation with you to discuss what your requirements are.
Okay, so another question from Francois, and it's one that we've anticipated. I think it's quite a nice one in a way, although I have to just read a little bit between the lines. Francois, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's saying he's using the term DAN insured, you know, so I guess it's DAN membership benefits. If one of their clients is diving and they're a DAN member, and there's now an issue, and you now have the dive center that's now covered through the liability package with the BME package, I guess, is there sort of a conflict of interest? Is that correct, Francois? Is that the question? Can you just give me a thumbs up if I summarized your text correctly? So while we wait for Francois, Gordon, if that's the case, I don't think that there's an issue because they're two separate things, you know. So
yeah, they're two separate things, yeah.
If there was a medical issue that, let's say there was an accident, obviously DAN membership would then cover that part and whatever else that's part of that from the medical and treatment perspective. But the liability side is a separate issue, and that will then be dealt from that side. Isn't that correct, Gordon?
Absolutely. And again, just bear in mind the legal process. It's not, just because an incident happened doesn't mean that you're necessarily guilty in the process. There has to be a procedure in place to find you guilty, and that's where the liability insurance comes in play. And in the broader sense, not just the professional indemnity insurance, but the broader liability is, the defense costs, to look at it and say, what are the merits of this case? And someone makes that call, and unfortunately, it's the guy with the hat and the grey suit and with the grey hair and the black cloak that sits there, and he puts his hammer down and he says, "What that?" And often, the insurers will look to settle before that. If it's a slam dunk case of wrongdoing, then they will negotiate a settlement.
Yeah. So Gordon, that leads into something else related to this topic. I guess liability claims don't happen hard and fast. They sometimes come months afterwards, or weeks after, say, something has happened, isn't that so? Or sometimes even years. And then I guess before you even get to all the bits, there's sort of the legal cost to consider, just to see whether this is a viable case or not. And I guess that's where this package comes in quite handy, isn't that so?
Correct, Mona. Yeah. So the various aspects. Also bear in mind that the insurance is not going to respond to previous issues in your business. It'll be from the date that you take out the policy, and it's made on a technical term called a claims made basis. So it's not on an occurrence based, which I'm getting a little bit technical in terms of the nice acronyms, and I try to stay away from them. But what the difference basically means, if you've got an occurrence policy, means that the policy needed to be in place at the time of the incident, but it might not be active now. So a typical thing would be in an engineering where you build a bridge, and you had policy on an occurrence basis for that bridge while it was being built. And then 20 years later, that bridge now is a engineering design flaw, whatever the case may be, and it now tumbles on and hurts a whole lot of people, and there's liability involved. Because you had an occurrence policy, it'll basically affect back to that incident from your flawed design in the thing, and it'll cover that.
Okay. All right.
Liability, what we're talking about, is a claims made basis. So even if the incident occurred 2 years ago or 3 years ago, the policy still has to be active today. In other words, you must be paying a premium on this policy for that to respond to that incident.
Yes. Yeah, because quite often in these liability cases, it's sort of like after the fact, people mull over things, and then the next thing things start happening.
They test the waters too. They test the waters too. It's not always the hot under the collar accusations. I'm going to sue you. When they approach a lawyer and find out, listen, you got to put down 100,000 to sue somebody, then tempers generally calm down, because now there's money involved. But if someone's willing to put that money down, then they've collected their evidence and they feel strongly about it.
So Dion Lowe just asked that we put some information on how the claims process works on the website. So I'll add that under the FAQ part, and then I'm sure that the BME team will also provide additional information on how that works. So Dion, thank you for that, and I'll make sure to add that. I think we have another question here, again from Francois. Great initiative, guys. Happy to assist with the Mauritius market. Please connect with me when convenient. Okay, well, thanks, Francois. We'll do that. It doesn't seem like there are any other questions. I think it's been a good session. Gordon, for your time and explanation, I thank you very much. And for the folks that have attended and those that are still here, thanks for your time again. What we are planning is to do a bit of a roadshow throughout South Africa and do a bit more face-to-face, at dive venues, central play or neutral places or central venues, to talk to people face-to-face, explain what the product's about, and get their questions firsthand. To help give a bit of a boost to the package. But maybe before we say cheers, can I ask the folks that are still online maybe just in the chat section to let me know, do you think this is a good product? Is it something that you would consider taking out? And if you have any things for us to consider to add that in, because that will be quite helpful just for us to gauge, has our blood, sweat and tears been worthwhile? Because, hey, Gordon's about almost 7 years that we've been at this. And yeah, it's small for the moment, but I do believe it can grow in leaps and bounds. And my vision is that it'll be available throughout the region. So, we need to just get it off the mark from here. So that's it from my side. I'll give you guys a couple of minutes just to add some stuff in or some comments in the chat box. Gordon, from your side, any closing remarks before we say goodnight?
Yeah, morning, and yeah, I just want to thank everyone for their time as well, and to listening tonight. And yes, to echo what you're saying is that we obviously will be doing a bit of a roadshow and just going around to the various members to explain, the new initiatives and things. But also, guys, I'm happy to have feedback from you. Obviously, I've tried to pitch the product, at a very, intermediate level here. If you feel that I can be a little bit more technical, more advanced, and you would more in depth into the product, please, I'd be very happy with the criticism and the feedback, and then I can adapt my presentation too. If you feel that maybe I was a bit over the top, please shout as well, and then maybe I can just bring it down a little bit and talk more generically in terms of the concepts and and give you a better explanation in terms of what is covered under this.
So Gordon, I
you.
see we're getting some comments in, so I'm just going to hang tight for some more folks to give us their feedback. What I can say is I remember years back I asked you to put a presentation together to address liability and insurance in general, because there were, obviously folks that were asking about liability. And you put a nice presentation together about, professional and business and personal liability and all this and that. But what I can see is that this package, especially from the business side, almost is quite an inclusive package, as you mentioned, which already is a bonus. I'm not saying it's an all one-stop shop, but for a dive business, this is quite cool. I think it allows, maybe you don't have the 40, 50, 100 million limits, but you might attract, some sharks that want some of those funds. And then it also, I think, in our market might become a little bit unaffordable. That's to start small and see where we end up. And then, Gordon, just for the folks that's still online, the BME team have been very helpful in producing an article that we'll be placing in the March issue of the Alert Diver that also explains a little bit more about liability and the concept behind what we're trying to launch here. So that's something to look out for. And I think that's it. So I can see, a lot of folks seem happy with the product and it's something they'll consider. So let's see where it goes, So that's it from my side. Gordon, thank you. Thanks to the
thank you, and thank you to everybody. And there are many of you that know me on things. So if you need to get hold of me and you have any other questions, please drop me a line or drop me an email, and I will endeavor to get back to you and give you information on what you need. So thank you very much.
All right. Good night. Over and out.
Good night. Good night. Thank you.